Welcome to Fashion Stage, where today we're going to be discussing whether Web3 has any room for the fashion at all. And we're going to do this together with our four friends. We have Gabriele, ex-CMO of Valentino, these days founder and CEO of One of One. We have Magnus Jones, ex-lead for Web3 in Nordics for EY. These days, board member of the Nordic Blockchain Association. We have Viranda Tantula, the creative director of Potion Projecta. And we have YiQin Zhu, founder of HVIIS. Yeah, and like we want to start usually, we're not going to be talking about us. We're not going to be talking about what we do, but instead, I want each of you to share one great example or one very bad example of a fashion company that has done something in Web3. Starting with you, Gianello. Something which is not about you, but someone else.
Well, first of all, thank you for the very, very nice question. Because at the end, anyone is talking about what is Web3 success. And sometimes you have to come from fail. At the end, I don't want to claim that brand, but anyone knows that starts using kind of an NFT approach just because of fashion trend something without any vision in business. And so creating collection without any planning, without any further vision, just because fashion asks to be the first to do something, to trendsetter, something like that, was a very, very bad line with $1.2 million invest in 2 years, talking about ideas of creating metaverse kind of stuff, calling this like Web3 approach, and think that this is the new way to do business. At the end, what happened for this brand and other brands was creating a second life kind of approach. That is definitely what we don't want to talk more about when it comes to Web3. Where to calculate the idea that the customer is at the center and you can manage what you do. It is completely different vision. And if you want to approach a fashion brand like the one I mentioned, that is very, very well known, in second group in the world, that start doing something on Web3, investing a lot of money, is not a disruptive wave. It's disruptive for the future. And anyone can see the potential. And sometimes if you gamificate too much, maybe you disconnect reality within the product. Last, to be quick, phygital is the approach that we need to maintain. We have to start to physical, back to digital, and back again to phygital. That's maybe the key, but this is my vision, and I think not only mine. Please. Another mic?
Yeah, let's see if this works. Of one example who has both succeeded and failed at the same time is a Norwegian brand called Carlings. They were the first one in the world to introduce actually virtual clothing of a real fashion brand back in 2014, long before NFTs or anything like this. But they had it so you could actually post it in social media. It was a long, thorough process to do it. They had to amend it to you. They had to apply to the picture. It was not a one-click quick fix, but still they had something. They had a product. They had an original line. They could have expanded on it, but they failed. And they failed due to that they just went into a conflict with the company who created this for them. So the board just didn't see a purpose of it, because just as we are discussing now with Web3 brands, everything happens to, happen and end up down in the R&D department, regardless of how you look into it. Because one thing is, call it the hype of looking into all brands that are there. If you see the list, regardless of, I can do the same thing when I'm building metaverses. I can pull up a whole Forbes 500 list and say, oh shit, this is happening. But we have to be realistic and look into that. None, and arrest me if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I have not personally met any project that is larger, reaching out to an audience larger than 5,000 to 10,000 people. That means in a fashion brand world, you end up in the R&D department. And that's where you need to find, call it the link and the logic sense towards having fun playing around with it, towards some who is making some type of money on it, towards other who appears to fail on it while not putting it into a context. So on the other side, I would say, of just one example of the ones that I've been working with of a branch over called Norwegian Fashion Hub for all the branch of clothing and shoe designers in Norway, but also the sister organization is in Denmark in the Nordics. They are looking into also doing this one, not for only, call it the company purposes like you described, but also for their own supply chain function. So I think that's also an angle to lift it up towards, to see it in the whole of the totality of the ecosystem of a brand, of looking into and understanding how can actually the C-level group benefit on it. The ones of the, call it the corporate bitches, who only look into the central bank digital currencies or looking into, call it for efficiency matters, getting all the boring stuff in there of pro forma invoices, customs declarations, all the clearance. But on the other side, see the link towards lots of the ones here are trying to build the innovative space of merging, call it the virtual fashion world with the existing products. And I think unless we manage to, call it, connect these two groups, you will never receive more than, call it 1% of a budget to do the R&D. While on the other side, I think 99 will relate to central bank digital currencies. And that's not the fact. It's first when you wake up and see the whole setting of them that you have your aha moment. And that's where I managed to pursue everything from banks, who is doing NFT projects, ordinals projects, to NFTs, to other stuff, and also metaverse. And they have suddenly woken up and said, hey, we cannot just allocate 10K there and 10K there. We should allocate at least 100K on all of them and actually build them together and join one working group. And I think that's one of the main challenges that we see, like the first fashion case I mentioned with Carlings. If they had woken up and understood, I think they would have been one of the leading players because they had a huge advantage. So if you just Google Carlings and virtual clothing, you will see a quite fascinating video out there on how far ahead of their time they were. But still today, they do actually nothing. So that's a long case of it, but I think that's something that we can have as discussion points going forward also.
Awesome. I think one of the things that you touched on that was really important was authenticity. And so before I talk about any specific brands, I'll say for context, I have worked at or with giant corporations, and then I've worked at or started small companies. So I have sort of empathy for both sides of things. Some of the companies I've worked for are Paramount Pictures, for example, Riot Games, worked very closely with Louis Vuitton at my time at Riot and now as a client at Potion. So what I'll say is, first, I'll talk about like 3 or 4 quick examples of things that just have been really cool to see in Web3 and fashion with some bigger brands. I think Nike's done some amazing things. I think Adidas has done some amazing things. I think Gucci's done some amazing things. So I have respect for anyone that can get things done at big companies or stakeholders at big companies willing to take a risk. That said, you know, some things have worked, some things have not. I think that in hindsight, I think, you know, if I'm just putting myself into the shoes of someone there, if I was at Nike, I might say, you know, why do we have 2 competing brands, you know, with Swoosh and Artifact and whatnot? And, you know, some of these things they'll figure out themselves and whatnot. But I think a lot of the outputs are really cool. The thing that if I found a commonality in maybe what's lacking in all of them is a sense of authenticity, because this space, this industry, whatever you want to call it, is so new. There are authentic people within these companies, but unless the highest level leaders, the people that approve budget, you know, VPs and above, are kind of on board, you're never really going to have like a really meaningful investment of human capital or dollars or whatever. So I actually think that the most cool stuff that's happening, and the stuff that I'm kind of the most bullish on, is happening on the ground level, is happening from startups in the space. I will say, before I talk about this brand, for full disclosure, conflict of interest, my company Potion is a small investor in this company, but nothing meaningful, particularly from a dollar sense, but more in a belief sense. I'm not sure if all of you guys are familiar with 9DCC, which G Money founded. I have a belief in, also for full disclosure, Potion, my company, we're not an investments company. That's the only company that we've put in any dollars into. We do some equity advising with part of our bandwidth, but mostly we're a creative studio and like an agency. So with that context, what I'll say is I have a belief in investing in people, not really products, if that makes sense. So that's sort of why we chose to do that. I think with 90cc, the thing that works is it's so authentic, but it's authentic in a realistic way. They've built a team of people that understand Web3 and the audience like natively. And then they've brought in the key people. Their chief brand officer, Ken, for example, comes from the traditional fashion world and they know how to build a brand. I think with them, they're not like saying something they are before they're that thing, if that makes sense. Like, and I think they're genuinely building like a sense of like audience and community. So pulling it away from them specifically, I'll say it's for me, it's all about authenticity. So.
Yeah, I mean, all the guests are having very nice conversation. From my side, I want to share one typical example. So for me, I think Adidas and Nike, they all launched very nice Web3 project. So Nike acquired Artifact, which is really nice in the space. Everyone knows it very well. Well, Adidas, they launched Metaverse, this space also. So their project was a little bit different. So it was really very high, very popular at the time, but they are not really understanding what is the real Web3 world. They have the whole image. They build a beautiful space. They have the PFP. They have all the merch. But in the end, it's more about community. So from Artifact, they have really huge audience. Their community are really supporting everything, all the audience, they are engaging. But from the Adidas side, it's more like the brand, they want to do some campaign. It's more like a social media campaign, not like a Web3 way to engage more people into this campaign. So in the end, all the PFPs of Adidas was the, how can I say, like 90% of the value was going down. This is really crucial. So when I'm doing like consultancy for luxury brand, for fashion brand, it's really important to let these companies to know what is Web3. Like, we are not really like, let's build a community, let's build a campaign. That's all of it. We have to really let people, the people in the community, to engage into the campaign. When you're talking with them, when you're having a deep conversation, when they are doing some advice, listen to them. So you have to put your effort to be active and responding what your community members, because they are the people who are collecting your like NFT. They are the people who are really buying. So for me, I think for the traditional brand, they're still thinking like, okay, Web3 is a way that we are approaching Gen Z, Gen Alpha. This, we have gamification, we have like launching our NFT, that's it. But it's like a continuously conversation that you have to keep diving to that and step by step and building the strong connection with them. And then one day, maybe they will be part of your team. Right. So I feel really different vibe between like traditional fashion brand and Web3 vibe that I'm seeing here all the conference. Yesterday, I was in the panel, like listen to other people from community side. They are building the community from 0 to 100K. So every day they put so much effort to listen to their community members. They are responding. That's how they build step by step. And the people in the community, they contribute, they trust. That's the way that I think maybe traditional brand, they have to think about that, how to really engaging, not only just we have a Web3 strategy, but still doing a Web2 way.
Just before you jump in, Sandra, I just would like to comment on a small thing since you mentioned Adidas. And it's nothing about what you said in per se, but I think one thing that is really important here that lots of people tend to forget. And that's coming back from me, from being a corporate bitch, working for EY for 9 years as the Nordic blockchain and innovation lead, and being a prostitute in a suit. And that's where we are then being a little cautious surrounding the tax and legal areas. And I was the guy who actually saved Adidas and made it possible for them to make their drop with the Bored Ape at the first time. They came to us 1.5 weeks before the drop, and they had no control about the tax and legal elements. It was a boring supply chain guy who was in charge of the hoodies and the beanies that they were sending out, and he was asking questions surrounding transfer pricing elements. And some of you say, transfer what? And these are tax and legal implications. They had no clue about sales tax in the US. They had no clue about VAT registration in Norway, for example, where I come from, or in the EU. But I could tell him that they were not registered there at the marketplace that was trying to sell it because we were working for the marketplace. And he was like, shit, so what you're saying, Magnus, is that we have a tentative tax exposure of at least 20x% in all jurisdictions plus additional fees? Yep. Okay, have you cleared this with your audit committee? Have you cleared it with the board receiving cryptos? No. And these were just some of the elements. And you know how we saved them? Because we also said, have you done a smart contract review? Have you checked your code? And they were like, smart what? Is this shit not working? OpenSea has been selling for a year and they're making millions of dollars. I said, yeah, but if you had commenced a real deal in the real world, would you have done a due diligence on the partner? Of course. Can I do the smart, what did they call it? Smart contract review? Yes, we can. We did it in 2 days. We found 10 yellow flags, nothing of a red close, but it's just because we are far ahead of the circle. So we had to identify it. And like he said, he told me straight out, and this is his word, Magnus, we're a large conglomerate, just like you. We're Adidas. We have 15 fucking internal lawyers there, and they know nothing about NFTs. How do you think you get 15 fucking internal lawyers to sign off a 10 flag yellow report from EY? It will not happen. So we were 1 day away from just stopping the whole thing. Well, I said, I can fix it. He was like, and you're selling these things to me after all this hassle? I said, yeah, it's easy. We do the Web2 thing. We just license out the use of the brand name Adidas to the exchange. So they have all legal obligation for sales tax, VAT, all other legal issues. You have to cut your revenue in two, almost, because they have to take a risk. And that's how we save them. So when you look into Adidas and see the numbers, you can put them and chop them in half because they didn't make that revenue because they had to do it in this way. And I've been allowed to talk about this case by Adidas. But this is just one case where we see the totality of missing in. And I'm not trying to be the party killer or the party pooper, but I'm just there because I see the risk and I know the risks that you have to combine, like I started with, the Web 2 and the Web 3 mindset. That's the only way forward to proceed and succeed here. So that's just one example that I would like to mention in the case of not being the party pooper, so we can discuss further more fun stuff going forward now. So now's the words to you, Sandro. You were very polite, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we can see, the panelists were amazing in putting in the teats about how can they help you in their responses as well. While they answered the question, is there a future? Not really. It's like, if you look at those examples, it has only been bad cases. Like there are big companies that are currently suing their vendors for multi-millions of damages. There's all the different question of like, is there even money in there? There's the question like whether the metaverse works. But here we are. We still believe that there's actually a way. Because there is the part where in September of last year, we thought that, okay, so we have constantly all the startups trying to share what's the next big thing. But no one usually is talking with the brands and asking them, what do they think is the next big thing? So we gathered 120 people into Lisbon during the Fashion Week, 50% of them from big brands like Dolce & Gabbana, Valentino, Prada, etc., and the others builders. And we only put the brands on stage and ask them, what do you think where the future is? And they said supply chain, loyalty, and a little bit of this gamification side of things, mostly for smaller brands like 90cc, who are just starting off, and for them it works. As my example, I'm bringing out the Estonian brand Guild, who made those clothes, and they're trying to get into the Web3 as well. Why they're able to do that and play with the metaverse side with different chips and stuff is because they're small. They don't have to think about the tax implications. They can just go and start playing and see where it goes. But for the bigger ones, they need to really look at it from the business case. So now the question is, considering everything, where do you actually see that there is future for Web3? What are the things where there's like actual things that might come to reality, as well as where are we at the moment? Starting with you.
Sure. It's funny. I think when I was thinking about the name of this panel, and I think about any panel that's like, is there a future for music in Web3? Is there a future for whatever? It's funny that the starting point is I'm like, oh God, the title of this thing is like flawed to begin with, which is, or shows the flaw, which is, the fact that, for years, everyone's calling this Web3. I think that things need to be earned, right? Like no one was calling Web2 in the middle of Web2. The term was coined at about the same period. I think Web3 was coined in like 2013 or 14, but it's been like used. And so what I think is what's happened is to the mainstream world, it's become poisoned, as we all know, sort of. I very much believe in the fundamentals of Web3, a lot of like the principles, like the if we're looking about the non-tangible, like the community side of it, if we're talking about the technological or like the tangible, the kind of authentication side of things, the ability to be in direct communication with your audience very easily, like, how many traditional brands can communicate with their entire audience with like the snap of their fingers, or send something to their entire audience with the snap of their fingers? Not many of them, probably none of them. So in that sense, I think that there's a lot of potential. I do think for like the last year or two, when things have been more quiet, there's been some like real building happening. And so I think that's kind of what it's going to be. It's about just driving audience value. But
Fair point. And I think one thing that we're seeing these days more is that it's not just about Web3. There's elements of Web3, but it's also elements of AI, elements of IoT, elements of everything else.
what I was just going to add to that is like, I think ultimately all it is emerging technology, and emerging technology has like always been a thing. It's funny, like attending this event or NFT Paris, I think these are ultimately like culture and technology events more than like a Web3 event or a crypto event or an NFT event. So I think I try and just talk about it when I talk with like my friends that are from the normies that are like outside of the world. I refer to all this stuff as like emerging technology. And then I don't have to deal with like the 10 minutes of like, but like crypto people are scammers and blah, 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 so.
So on that point, we can reframe the topic of the thing. What is the future of fashion?
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that, thank you, Sander, for this. We have to define what fashion is before starting discuss.
So we go back to the first principles.
I'm pretty sure because, someone confused what fashion is. If you're talking about top luxury, or you're talking about premium brand, or you're talking about mass brand, it's completely different story. But starting from the very basic line, customer experience is everything. Anyone is saying this. The dream of each brand is to have a recurrent loyalty. If we start from that is definitely a common line for each brand. That is create community, create interest. Then maybe we can answer a part of this very complex question. Because from my standing point, what I can see is that big brands like the one mentioned before, even if the one I work for example, Valentino or, Dolce & Gabbana, whatever, has different vision. Because our focus at that time and today is an obsessive vision of the customer happiness. If we start from that, we can see that the Web3 offers us the idea to make the customer at the real center of his own relation with the brand. So changing and turning the point of vision, we start for creating services. So loyalty, for sure, could be a very first milestone on working on. Then transparency, for sure. Anyone is talking about the way you can connect consumer to the real story of what is behind the scene. At the end, the Web3 offers you to be part of the story. Just to give a couple of examples, if you visit a premium luxury boutique, you are a unique person in that moment in the eye of the person who is welcoming you. And from that moment on, something happened. So Web3 can help us in creating a digital and physical, again, phygital experience, because at the end, after years of investment in retail, years of investment in real estate, brands want to have this kind of return of investment that could be kind of continuous red line between what happened in the boutique and what happened on the digital touch point. At the end, all the bad experiences are not that bad because we learn. But at the end, it's not the gamification per se that is for sure the answer, but it's a part of the story. Again, how Hermes can interpret gamification and how Nike can, for example, interpret the same kind of stuff. Different target, different ways, maybe different mindset. If I expect to buy a fantastic limited edition of a sneaker that I'm paying kind of $500, is not exactly the same digital experience I want to have when I buy an Hermes bag of $14,000 to $15,000. So, I expect differently. And the brand is similar to that. Okay, you want what am I?
So on that point,
I just want to rebound on this. The quality. All these brands that went into Web3, Adidas, Nike, etc., they've been giving as a reward some merch, and the quality was shit as fuck. So even like the dot swoosh shoes, they're not Nikes when you wear them at all. And I think this is also a problem. They're not taking this seriously enough.
You're completely right. So Nizar, at the end, quality is definitely, we are obsessed about quality when it comes to luxury brand. When it comes to massive, day to day, the comparison between a Zara product and, a design product is kind of, trend oriented. But when you touch it, you can absolutely know that the difference comes from the very beginning of the funnel. Why we cannot maintain the same difference also on digital kind of stuff? But this is, kind of, there's no answer from my side at the day of today of this topic, but I think we can together find a way to differentiate what is democratic in terms of accessibility and what does an exclusive, inclusive experience.
So let's see, just with the show of hands, when it comes to a couple of topics that was just mentioned, then who of you has actually had a experience, positive, negative, with the following things in fashion? Fashion, Web3, and loyalty. So we're still emerging. Fashion, Web3, and traceability. Roughly the same. And then fashion, Web3, and metaverses. And then lastly, fashion, Web3, and shitty quality merch. Magnus.
No, I'm thinking what you said also then is and how also brands need to see who are they addressing, because that's also an important thing here in terms of that you just throw this one out to all your customers. Like when Porsche did their drop, I talked to Tim Walter, who is in charge of the whole thing there, and asked him, how many of your members of Porsche Club did actually buy into your NFT? And Porsche Club is for everyone in the whole bloody world who owns a Porsche, quite a lot of people. And he said, I think it was 2 or 3. And this gives you the perspective that you need to look into it in a realistic way. Like you say, hey, you can go out and do the digital thing, but are the ones in there to get the physical one and don't care shit about the virtual one, or is it the opposite? And I think that's the important thing to understand. So like when I carried out a survey in the Nordics for several years, and in the last 3 consecutive years in Norway, we have had more people below the age of 40 who has cryptocurrency compared to ordinary stocks and shares, while plus 40 is just the total opposite. And I think that's the mindset you need to look into of who are you actually addressing here of your customers, and split and divide. And I think we have one example of this one going out right now with Hugo Boss, where they split their brand in Hugo and Boss. And Hugo is supposed to address the younger, cool generation. And when they also do a drop now together with the Formula 1 team in Roblox, it means they see some potential there, but still it's not Web3 per se. So I think we need to also be realistic to look into where are the users compared to saying we go to a shitty decentralized thing where you have 60 users or 600 or whatever, compared to saying 200 million unique users in Roblox. There's the link. And I think that's where the ironic part, and again, I'm not trying to be the corporate bitch or the party killer, because I do also fun stuff like I created Metaverse Office for Norwegian governments, and also designed a virtual clothing collection for them. So I have my hands dirty there. But still, you know, it's down to making it more convenient and easy for them. Because if you go out to the average, whether or not it's Dolce & Gabbana, Louis Vuitton, or who else it might be in there, the user out there doesn't have the hands-on knowledge to handle a wallet themselves. We need, ironically, third parties, centralized third parties with trust who can handle this for them and make it more easy and convenient. That's how I think we can onboard it and see more of, call it, a future for it. But clearly, to answer the question, is there a future for fashion in Web3? Clearly, yeah. But we need to make it more swift and convenient and be realistic about the time perspective of how we see, call it, the onboarding of the relative clients there. So I would say I would rather focus in call it the 5 to 10 year perspective here when you apply the Web3. But when what we talked about, XR, AI, and blockchain together and covering, call it, all of the metaverse, as I call it, then I think we will see a much swifter evolvement, but not necessarily some project leaving out the blockchain part while including AI and XR, and then maybe trying the steps. So it's the combination of where you can pick the best from XR, AI, and blockchain that I see the future of this thing, including fashion, but like you say, whatever it is. The world is turning digital, and it would be stupid to, you know, presume something different. That of course fashion is going digital, and it's going to be huge.
Touching on two things. So like the topic of yeah, you brought up a lot of good points, man. The topic of fashion's different than style and like cool. And, you know, fashion can obviously, or style can happen and cool factor can happen at any level. I'm glad that the gentleman in the audience brought up the quality issue, because I certainly think that there's no excuse for brands that are premium or luxury to ever have low quality products, which they kind of have sometimes in this space, particularly when like you can have an entry level priced item that is of high quality, a Casio watch, a garment from Uniqlo, like those are made well, you know. Speaking to the other thing I wanted to say was I think you touched on the why, right? Like the why is key. I cannot tell you how many brands come to us and ask us to help them gamify something. I'm like, they don't even understand the difference between gaming and gamification, right? They see that my company's worked on a lot of gaming collabos, and they think that we work on customer loyalty programs. And I kind of ask them, I'm like, I don't know, like, why do you even want to do a gamified experience? Do you even know what that means? You know, and it's like getting to the why and then building the output from there versus, you know, I think that in the early days of this space, I think it's corrected now, but in the early days of this space, it's sort of like, let's focus on the technology first, which sort of didn't make sense. Like, let's just look at like what we can actually do to make our product better from the audience. And then like the revenue will follow. I think everyone was just too revenue focused initially.
Yeah, so I think everyone touched a lot of things. So I just want to give some very simple example. I was doing research in the fashion meets Web3. So after I seen a lot of use case of these companies, what they are doing, I think that we have to point out we are still at very, very early stage. Like all the technology, like AI, I see a lot of companies, they have already implement into their strategies, also their like creative side, their brand strategy, also other things. And also we see like AR, it's really growing a lot. There's like a AR mirror and AR try-on to like for more level campaigns. And also for the metaverse, there's a lot of brands they are trying to enter, but we have to understand which is the best metaverse. Like, let's say a lot of active users they are targeting. So we see like, for me, I do a lot of research. I see Roblox, they really have a large target with young generation, like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. And in their research, like you can see a lot of like people, like young designer, like 12, 13, they start to doing their own garments and they are earning a bunch of money. So we do have an audience like really young. They are growing with the computer, like they are growing with all the internet. They have their in real life, let's say, identity, like we are presenting every day. They have their social identity, like on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, every day. They do have their own like metaverse identity because they spend a lot of time. They make friends there. They spend playing games, chatting. They meet new friends. So this is also very important for them to be presented. They are so cool in their metaverse space and to be changing every day like they're usually start. So this could be a very interesting point for brands. Let's say if we look at this space, big brand like luxury Gucci, they are selling some, like, let's talk about gamified assets into Roblox. Maybe they're just paying like a small quantity, like 5-10 euro from their mom's, credit card. But it gives them like, yes, now I have it. I look super cool. Think about this young generation when they are growing up. They have money. Why? I want to have the same one in the physical world. So that's also a mindset that branding can think about, not only for the playing, but also they try to connect with young generation to let them know their brand from like in the gaming experience. This is the point I think really could be a future for like all the fashion brand entering into the space.
Thank you. Thank you for all of this. And I think we can take two outcomes from all of this. That if you're a builder in the space, then you really need to understand who are you focusing on. And you can't just be doing a small feature, but you have to look at the whole thing. And then you can potentially find brands that could be working with you. And if you're a brand, then you also need to really understand that, okay, if you're a high quality brand trying to do something, you shouldn't really go and try to do the low level, simple stuff. And if you do, then you have to really put the effort in it. But there's other things that you can be doing. Now as a last quickfire round, everyone gets 10 words to say what is the part where some of the audience here should be coming to meet you. So what's your call to action? Start. So what's your call to action? Why should someone come and reach out to you?
Oh, so I do like Web3 strategy, also AR campaign. So if you have anything like basically in fashion industry, so I do a consultancy for that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. So I'm also organizer for Fashion Metaverse Conference. We have been doing like a 4-day immersive conference in the Metaverse space, having 70 speakers from AI, digital fashion, and Web3 community. So that's what I want to do, like educate people, onboarding more people into the Web3 space. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, we at Potion create entertainment-based IP-based entertainment experiences and culture experiences. We're sort of like category agnostic, but we're probably best known for our work in the intersection of gaming and fashion and gaming and music. So anything that anyone wants to talk about regarding those topics, virtual artists, etc., I'm happy to chat.
Well, I just left the corporate world 2 weeks ago. I'm building a couple of new companies now, so I'm in stealth still, but it's definitely within this industry. So I am literally doing A to Z within this landscape, but I'm not here to charge you the EY hours. I'm more here to build this together and seek the synergies, because what history has learned me is that, like you said, Sander, that you really have to understand what you're doing. And what unfortunately I have seen is that there's been way too many advisors or consultants who have sold thin air over the years since 2015-16 when the hype started arising. And that's when we have to put down a team of experienced people, all depending on, like you said, what do you actually want out of this one? What is your ROI? And that can be a lot of different things. And that's where I can help you to sit down and find the right people, the right team for the right purpose. And that's what I want to do and what I believe in, that we build this thing together, because we are, like you said, very early still very early, as many of you think and feel that, whoa, shit, this has happened, but this has clearly not happened when we look into the facts of the numbers. And as I think we all concluded that the future, regardless of its fashion or music or whatnot, it will come, but it will take some time. And up until then, we need to do the utmost best of what I refer to as doing something called now, next, beyond. Do what is possible now, so you can be in a better position than your competitors, so you can actually create the next, while also be crazy enough to imagine the beyond And that's the killer part and the difficult part, to imagine a world that doesn't currently exist. And that's how we managed to, for example, get Norwegian authorities into the metaverse. They didn't imagine that 2 years ago, but only 1 year ago, they were mature enough. This is just one banal example of how I think if you put down the right team, you can make things happen and make the world go forward.
Thank you, Magnus. Well, we at One are focused on two different topics that are all around the brand. First one is authentication. A second one is identification. Connecting in a digital experience that is made by not technology per se, but a connection between the physical item, the Web3 opportunities, and the consumer. So we offer support in terms of strategy before, thanks to more than 25 years of experience in the field. Then connecting technology, emerging technology, and whatever within nanotech in our case. So we develop a digital DNA, so that it's a folder, invisible, that can be put physically on the product that made you able to connect consumer to the full chain. But the most important things we can do is support in everyday business-related focus and target the consumer journey and the brand journey. Thank you. Thank you, Sander, for inviting us, and thanks all the guys here to talk.
Yeah. And just from a last point from my side, then I'm all about money. So my focus is on making companies increase their revenues by building communities around them. So we're building something in stealth, which will help companies build their loyalty programs end to end, out of the box, no developers, no marketeers needed. And other than that, we are hosting a BananaConf. That's why we have bananas. We're doing this around the world. And one of the things focused specifically about fashion is the upcoming Web3X Fashion in Milan again during the fashion weeks there. So if you want to meet up with brands, we'll bring them together. I will make sure that the partnerships that you make money to you. Thank you.